Delighted to welcome tonight's main speaker, who I've known for many years, mostly through our connections with with Lutheran seminaries. Right now, Ted is a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and he's emeritus professor at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary and also at the Graduate Theological Union. He has a volume, God, the World's Future, which is now in its third edition. He has written numerous texts related to today's topic. He's done an edited volume called Promise and Peril of AI and IA, New Technology Meets Religion. He's done a book on theology on many other theological topics. He had done some work on CRISPR, for which I had followed over the years. And he has a website called tedstimelytake.com, which I urge you all to go to. You'll learn a lot by going to take a look at it. So tonight, Ted is going to talk to us about AI, IA, transhumanism, and public theology. Ted, please get started. Why don't you share your screen?
Gail, good to connect with you once again and to greet all my friends and colleagues at IRAS. As Maynard mentioned, we made it to the 2024 Star Island, but missed 2025. So hopefully I'll see you all in 2026. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you all will be able to see what I see. Our topic,
Yes,
AI.
it's up, and it's in presenter. It's perfect, Ted.
Okay, thanks, Gail. All right. Anything goes wrong, just whistle, ring a bell.
I will.
Okay, thanks. Artificial intelligence, intelligence amplification, transhumanism, and public theology. Did we forget any topics? So, our good friend in the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, announces that future and the AI revolution belong together. Artificial intelligence is the future, says Mr. Putin, not only for Russia, but for all humankind. It comes with colossal opportunities, but also threats that are difficult to predict. Whoever becomes the leader in this sphere will become the ruler of the world. So if you want to become the ruler of the world, then I guess you should invest in AI. My framework for approaching this subject is what I call public theology. And as Maynard and Gail have invested a great deal of energy in recent decades on the dialogue between science and religion, that's an example of public theology. It's public theology that is interpreting and evaluating and making recommendations about matters outside the church. Science is one of those secular matters that the theologian shares a sense of responsibility for. In this case, it's a very specific technology, artificial intelligence. Theologians should be, most of the time they are, very sensitive to culture. So it's this triangle, this interaction between AI, culture, and what the theologian thinks about it that is our framework. I have a working definition for public theology. It doesn't replace church theology, it's something we add on. Public theology is conceived in the church, critically developed in the academy, and offered to the wider culture for the sake of the common good. And you can see that it may start from the church, but then it goes out and has as its target audience those outside the church. And yes, there are public theologians who are not Christians. I'll mention a couple of them as we go. For those that don't know me, I am in Berkeley at the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences at the Graduate Theological Union. We publish this journal, Theology and Science, and currently my colleagues, just involving me, but I'm not a leader, have a John Templeton-funded program called the Virtuous AI Project. It's headed by Braden Molick, who's our lead professor in theology and science these days. With regard to my own contributions earlier this year, and I think Gail might have mentioned this, I published this edited volume, The Promise and Peril of AI and IA, and it includes 2 marvelous chapters by Noreen Hertzfeld. So get it red hot off the press and read what Noreen has to say, in addition to the other fine books that she has published. Related to AI is the issue of transhumanism. The transhumanists amongst us are very invested in the progress of artificial intelligent technology and have developed a whole ideology, a religious-like ideology on top of it. And my colleagues, Arvin Gao, who's a geneticist. In fact, I think Arvin was an IRAS speaker a few years back, when we did a Star Island program on the future of genetics. And Brian Patrick Green, a Roman Catholic bioethicist at Santa Clara University, did this book on religious transhumanism and its critics. This year, as Gail mentioned, I work with Arvin Gao, and we published this book, The CRISPR Revolution in Science, Religion, and Ethics, and it does reflect some of what we did at Star Island a few summers ago. These things kind of go together, even though they're not identical, to be sure. We're going to focus today primarily on the future of AI technology and a little bit on religious transhumanism. Well, my first question, I got about 5 or 6 questions to organize our little tour through the subject matter. How realistic is the transhumanist anticipation of the singularity? I'll try to explain what I mean by that if this is unfamiliar to you. Okay, we did it. All right, some key terms. You may know the definition of these terms. Well, let me just spit them out. Artificial intelligence, what's that? AI is the intelligence of machines and the branch of computer science which aims to create it. Okay, so 2 different definitions. The most exciting thing, okay, one of the long-term goals currently being pursued by our techie friends in Silicon Valley is AGI, artificial general intelligence, sometimes called strong AI. And the measure of success here is if machine intelligence could equal that of the intelligence we know best, namely our own. Strong AI is classically defined as interactive, autonomous, self-learning agency. Agency, I think, is a big word, which enables computational artifacts to perform tasks that otherwise would require human intelligence to be executed successfully. Okay, do you find that a satisfactory definition? Well, I'm just saying that's the kind of definition we see at work. What is concerning us for the next 5 minutes is going to be superintelligence. That is to say, machine intelligence or enhanced human intelligence that goes over and above the intelligence that we currently know. Superintelligence, which continues to make babies that are even more intelligent. So we're going to call that the singularity. If you don't know what I mean, fasten your seatbelt. Science fiction. Werner Vinge, 1992. With the creation of superhuman intelligence, the human era will be ended. Transhumanists love the theory of evolution. They think that nature is progressing. They can imagine that your and my status as Homo sapiens is but a transitional stage to a higher form of life, a more intelligent form of life, and whether it be machine or enhanced human intelligence, it's going to beat us. It's going to be super intelligent. We're going to become second place. In fact, super intelligence, once it runs the world, might eliminate you and me as an artifact no longer needed. Here is Nick Bostrom. If you had a kind of oligarchy of transhumanist theoreticians and leaders, Nick at Oxford, I actually don't know him personally. He would be on that list. Machine intelligence is the last invention Homo sapiens will ever have to make. Why? Superintelligence will take over the inventive process. The singularity. Well, Ray Kurzweil of Silicon Valley likes this term. This refers to that threshold crossing to superintelligence wherein superintelligence takes over the running of the world. It spawns exponential growth in the level of intelligence, and you and I will fall into the dustbins of evolution. The term post-human appears here in the vocabulary, but Ray is sort of, between. On the one hand, he likes the idea of a post-human evolutionary stage, but on the other hand, he wants this for the good of humanity. He wants you and I as Homo sapiens to enjoy an intelligence augmented future. The term intelligence amplification is used less frequently, but it's very important both in the field of AI as well as the transhumanist ideology on top of it. Intelligence amplification or computer brain interface. You can imagine surgically implanting a micro-sized computer in your brain. A few years ago, I had a meeting with Silicon Valley techies at Stanford on the future of this. Actually, it was about 23 or 24 years ago now. And oh my gosh, these techies, in their 30s with their PhDs and just ready to rip up the world. And they were talking at coffee over IA, intelligence amplification. And Nick Bostrom was weighing in. Imagine, he says, we're going to put in our brains a computer. And this computer is going to hold all of the information in Encyclopedia Britannica. I wonder why he mentioned that, because he's from Oxford instead of Wikipedia, but be that as it may. So now you and I have in our brain with immediate access when we're giving a lecture, you don't have to think too hard and suddenly, boom, all the facts are there and available. And just as an aside, one of the fallacious assumptions I find in this crowd is the following: increased access to information leads to a leap in intelligence. Anyway, that's a widespread assumption. I question that assumption. But let me continue with this conversation we were having over coffee. So all the techies in the group, there might have been a half dozen or so. Oh boy, this is really neat. Intelligence amplification through deep brain implant. And then Bostrom speculates. He says, but that information goes out of date rather rapidly. In fact, there's new discoveries. So what we need to do is have an antenna, radio antenna within that gadget that's surgically implanted in our heads that is attuned to a satellite, and that satellite every 2 weeks will beam down an update. So we'll always be growing in the knowledge that we have in the encyclopedia that's inserted in our brain. Oh, everybody kind of, oh, that's great. Sip of coffee and pat ourselves on the back for being such geniuses. And then Nick says, who's going to be in charge of that satellite again? Somebody honest? What if it's a tyrant? What if it's a tyrant who sends disinformation right straight into our brain and we can't shut it off? What if the tyrant tells us lies or propaganda? Oh my gosh, that was a sour moment. Nobody was drinking their coffee. I interrupted and I said, I can think of something worse. Oh, yeah, what? I said, imagine if that satellite pumped into my brain nonstop Cars for Kids commercials, and I couldn't escape advertising. At any rate, when you're thinking about the future, you have to look at the pluses and the minuses, and that's what's going on in the AI industry these days, and public theologians ought to become a part of it. Well, the transhumanist groups who really want, they've even had candidates for president, they really would like to become a social force. Billy Grassi, theologian, looks at this and says, this looks kind of like a religion to me. The singularity movement is a kind of secular religion, promoting its own apocalyptic and messianic vision of the end times. Yes, it is utopian in character. As Noreen Hertzfeld, anxious that we're just going to turn a corner next year or the year after, and suddenly we're going to have AGI, and then right after that, superintelligence, we're going to cross the singularity. No. And if you know Noreen, you know that she's a professor of both computer science as well as theology. She knows both fields very well, and she can say on the basis of the actual research in the field, it's not very likely to happen. We are unlikely to have intelligent computers that think in ways we humans think, ways as versatile as the human brain, or even better, for many, many years. That is to say, it's not going to happen for many, many years, if ever. So, as I said before, I think there's a little problem in the theory of intelligence that transhumanists work with. And perhaps Noreen can say just exactly what the problem in the theory of intelligence might be. But she's not, despite the amazing speed of contemporary chat GPT, that's not intelligence. Question number 2. What do our techie leaders fear? This is an important question because in 2023, during the Joe Biden administration in the US, the software engineers, the techie dynamos, suddenly got worried about what we've been talking about. They fear a superintelligence takeover in which the machines would conquer the planet and render the human race extinct. They had a second fear, human malfactors. What happens if the great power of AI gets in the hands of maleficent individuals? So theologically, is Frankenstein a theological concept, I wonder? Do AI techies and do transhumanists have a Frankenstein complex? That is to say, the creation of a mechanical monster that is going to come back to destroy us? Well, the transhumanists are unabashedly Promethean. And if you may remember, our word Frankenstein comes from Mary Shelley's novel of about 1818, and she had just experienced the rise of electricity in the 1790s, etc. And people were believing in culture at the time that electricity might be the secret of life. And so that's why in the Frankenstein story, you know, at the key moment, the dead body is raised up where lightning strikes it, and it comes alive. And so Mary Shelley called her story Frankenstein the modern Prometheus. Transhumanists love Prometheus. Here is Simon Young Transhumanist Manifesto. Let us cast aside cowardice and seize the torch of Prometheus with both hands. Yes, there's going to be a risk taken that we will self-destruct. Well, in 2023, as I mentioned, the really smart billionaire techies got together and said, we have to treat this as a threat, and a threat on the scale of pandemics and nuclear war. The world needs to organize now to protect ourselves from this future. And they published this document called Mitigating the Risk of Extinction. How do you like that for a title? And that include Bill Gates, Ray Kurzweil, Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, and Martin Rees, the great astrophysicist in Great Britain, who looks forward in evolution to disembodied machine intelligence. These people got worried and got nervous, and believe it or not, they asked the governments of the world to step in to provide laws, what they called guardrails, to guide technological development. Oh, yeah, some controversies broke out. And if you take a look at the chart behind the robot's head, singularity timeline, they're looking at the advance of technological development, and both they think the machine intelligence and singularity, superintelligence, all those things are coming really soon. And that's what seems to be causing trepidation amongst the people who should know the most. So we had the Biden administration in the US, the European Union, government groups all over the world start the process of providing government intervention in the form of guardrails in order to prevent primarily the rise of superintelligence and the singularity, and also to prevent malefactors getting a hold. And so take a look at this document, Presidential Order of Biden, Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy Artificial Intelligence. That's only 2 years ago. Even China got in on it, and this year constructed its own list of protections or guardrails. We got a problem. Remember Nick Bostrom saying, who's going to be in charge of the satellite? That's the question we have to ask. And here is Nick Clegg, a former member of parliament in Great Britain, and now I can't remember if he's working for Meta, is it, here in the Silicon Valley? I can't remember for sure. He left Great Britain, came back to the US, and at any rate, he calls this a techlash is happening. The techlash is fundamentally about power. People do not believe that technology companies use their power in the best interests of society. If so much power lies in the hands of these tech companies, and if the guardrails that governments put into place are ineffective, then can we trust these businesses to have the best interests of the health of the planet? We worry about that. His principle, and you're going to see this again and again, technology has to serve society, not the other way around. Here's one of the smart people in the field, Stuart Russell at Cal. And here's his comment. If Noreen Hirschfeld is right, that superintelligence and singularity are not likely futures, what does that leave? Malefactors, evil people who might take charge. And Stuart Russell may be in agreement with Hirschfeld. I don't know if she can tell us. There's not really going to be a super intelligent machine. Why? Well, because none of the theoreticians even understand consciousness, which we will normally associate with intelligence. Here's Elon Musk. Did you think that Elon Musk could have a moral moment? Here's one of them, in 2023, 2.5 years ago. Powerful Um, Powerful AI systems should be developed only once, that is to say, shut down development until we can get guardrails in place. Powerful AI systems should be developed only once we are confident that their effects will be positive and the risk will be what? Manageable. It won't get out of control. Does he believe that now in the fall of 2025? I don't know, but that great sense of caution of 2023, I don't see it anymore in Silicon Valley. All right. Next question, number 3. Will alignment save us? If you ask our techie friends, well, what should we do? One of the answers we hear most frequently is keep the machine aligned to human direction and control. Okay, good. Well, one thing theologians know about is sin. Oh, keep the machine aligned to the human being, but what happens if the human being is sinful in character? Here's Fifi Lee. She's called the godmother of AI. Exactly why, I don't know. She's very smart, born in People's Republic of China, now a professor at Stanford. And she says flatly, I don't want to give agency to AI. Prevent AI from becoming an agent. Humans should be the agents. Humans should be controlled. Keep AI aligned to human direction. And the word tool appears here. Keep AI in the tool category. There are two kinds of alignment, internal and external. You have internal objectives that remain stable, and these remain stable even when confronting novel situations. Or outer alignment, I think that's what Fifi Lee is talking about. A match between the system behavior and human preferences enforced by guardrails or oversights. So I think it's outer alignment that is primarily what Fifi Lee was mentioning. But the theologian is going to be quick to say, but what about sinners getting power? And we're going to have risks of having vast surveillance of vast populations, deep fakes, disinformation, harassment. The whole information environment might collapse because you can't tell fact from fiction, truth from untruth. Lethal autonomous weapon systems that
I'm afraid something happened with Ted's connection. In the meantime, if she's nearby, I want to invite Noreen um, to come on and uh, share whatever is on her mind at this point, just so we don't have dead air.
Sure. I'm right here and happy to do that.
But don't share
Um,
anything you think Ted should hear.
there we go. Okay. Wow. I mean, I got a lot of thoughts already about what he has said, but he had just mentioned uh, AI as a tool, and one of the things that I think is the case is that AI is the most useful. AI programs that are focused and used as a tool are the most useful to us. But you also find with chatbots that that's maybe not really what people want. In other words, what they end up wanting is a partner or even a surrogate for other humans. Probably because the machine will not make as many demands. So when you look at ChatGPT, for example, 4.0 had been trained with a lot of in its human part of the training, it was trained to give answers that people liked. Because the human trainers, of course, would say, "Oh, like that answer, don't like that answer," and so it became very sycophantic. And OpenAI decided with 5.0, oh, we should try to tone that down a little bit. They did, and a lot of people ended up, demanding bring back 4 because they liked the fact that the AI would tell them what they wanted to hear. And I think that is one of the dangers that we find in this AI. that we're looking for an other that will make no demands on us, that we can shut off when we want, and that gives us what Sherry Turkle calls love that is safe and made to measure.
Here's a recent Eric Schmidt, former Google CEO, on the issue of what the theologian is going to call sin. He fears that AI in its super intelligent stage is going to jump all guardrails. It's going to be starting to let chaos loose on society, facilitating jailbreaks. He even predicts that AI will learn how to kill people. Now, isn't that a future that you and I want to greet with great glee? I'm reminded it doesn't hurt for us to remind ourselves from time to time of the 3 laws of robotics. It goes back, what, 60 years to Isaac Asimov? The robot may not injure a human being or through interaction allow a human being to come to harm. How do we know if our robots are going to adhere to law number 1? Number 2, a robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. So Fifi Lee would be augmented here, not just keeping the robot attuned to human alignment, but also human alignment that protects human life. A robot must protect its own existence, self-survival, as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. I wonder if we could pass some legislation with those 3 laws. One of the salutary dimensions of the current controversy is that the Vatican, both Pope Francis and Pope Leo XIV, have begun investing enormous energy into the AI issue and its global consequences. And one of the healthy dimensions of AI concern is the concept of the common good. The Catholics have really done the world a service in trying to spell out the common good and elicit commitment to it. And so Pope Francis is going to say alignment means aligning machine intelligence to the common good of the entire human family, which is the sum total of social conditions that allow people, either as groups or individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. My secular ethicists like the word flowering, where he has fulfillment, but that is kind of your mainstream common good line of thinking. My 4th question. I've got, I think, 6 or 7, and so I don't want to go too much longer here. Number 4, back to the theory of intelligence. Is it realistic to forecast that AI will develop selfhood, human-like selfhood, and a sense of moral responsibility? Would it be desirable? I want to point out that the intelligence that we know, human intelligence, is oriented around a self. Here's a new definition of artificial general intelligence. Remember, that's machine intelligence that mimics human intelligence. And note, it's a set of 10 functions. What's in the middle? Nothing. Here's another definition of intelligence. An agent is intelligent when its actions are appropriate for its circumstances. 2, it is flexible. 3, it learns. 4, it makes appropriate choices. All function. I just want to say that I don't think that's a sufficiently nuanced concept of intelligence, because it looks like intelligence is nothing more than an agglomeration of functions, and what you and I experience is a self who sets goals for the future and tries to make decisions and take actions to achieve them. So, and I think that's what we mean by agency. A few years ago, I had to kind of work out my own theory of intelligence. I came up with seven qualities here, and the last the first four we share with amoebas, the most simple life forms. But then 5, 6, and 7, boy, that requires abstract thinking, goal setting, etc. Is that going to be a characteristic of intelligence that we can get from just having more information? Is there an I in AI? And as of the moment, no. Does selfhood belong to intelligence or not? Well, we should just observe that the intelligence that we know has it. What you'll hear from Noreen is slightly different. She says the intelligence that we know in human beings is not autonomy. It's not radically individual. No, it's the result of a dynamic relationality. What matters most in our humanity is not our intelligence, which is, after all, given to us in different measures and too soon taken away by illness or death. Rather, the image of God is found whenever 2 or 3 meet in authentic relationship. So phenomenologically, your and my intelligence grows through interaction, and theologically, it's that network of relationships with one another and with God that defines a human as a human. Does that apply to intelligence in general, let alone AGI? I'm going to skip over the next sections here with because I've got time in mind, and I've slowed down a little bit here. I want to say a few things about digital religion and what has happened. Not much has happened. Here's Beth Singler, University of Zurich, and as she looks at the future of AI, she can imagine religious groups either rejecting AI, adapting to AI, or fully adopting it. And so you can ask yourself, well, where are you? If you like public theology, let me brag about Pax Lumina. It's a magazine that's published in Kerala, India, and it's published primarily by Jesuits, but also non-Jesuits and some Hindus, etc. It is the best journal on public theology, in my opinion, and it's free, and it's online, and it's free, so you can't go wrong. And here are 2 Christians writing, machines do not have the capacity for self-reflection, a basic function of consciousness. Ergo, it follows there's no religious quality to machine intelligence. Deep fakes. Is that a religious issue? Well, some people think it is. This guy does. He's kind of an evangelical broadcast and social media ministry kind of guy, and he objects to deep fakes of Jesus. Can you get Jesus online and have him counsel your soul? And McFarland just lets loose. It's the tragic reality of America that we've reached this level of depravity. Deepfakes and depravity go together. It is time for our nation to return to our Judeo-Christian roots and reestablish a sense of right and wrong. If we don't, there is no hope for the future of our nation as we plunge further into darkness and decay. I want to say I've listened to evangelical preachers in every decade of my life, and they always say the same thing. What about adaptation? So here is D.K. Jung at Yonsei University in South Korea. He would disagree with those Pax Lumina theologians. He believes that AI is fully capable of developing not just superintelligence, but also self-awareness, consciousness, and becoming itself religious. We should cultivate their development to enable the AI robots to utilize religious scriptures, traditions, reason-based inference processes, and through participation in religious rituals. In the book that I edited, I had a couple Muslim authors who are in the same situation as D.K. Jung. From the Islamic and monotheistic standpoint, the human brain harbors the requisite complexity for consciousness and soul manifestation. So we may end up kneeling next to an AI robot in the mosque at prayer. In a couple places in Asia, we have Buddha bots. The Buddha bots are primarily there for teaching. Here we have a German Lutheran robot pastor, and you punch in your prayer request on his chest, and he'll pray for you. So those of you who are ordained, you better look for a second job. You might get replaced. Oh, I must have said something wrong because the demons are back. Shamanism in Korea. You go to the shaman and interact with the shaman, and her name is Sham-in, Shama-in, and you can have personal counsel. Here's Hoop Young Kim at Gangnam University. He's a Christian, but he wants a real indigenous Korean Chinese heritage Christianity. He calls it Theo-Taoism. And when it comes to AI technology, don't think of it as merely a tool. Remember Fifi Lee at Stanford, it's a tool, not for him. Oh no, AI technology is, as Heidegger would say, it's being in relationship. The technology leads us down the path of embodying life, empathy, and wisdom. I'd love to hear Noreen's opinion later. Does she get life, empathy, and wisdom from her computer? The Pew Research Center says that by and large, people will say they like computers as tools, but they're not very interested in asking ChatGPT to serve the function of counseling or religious advice. Adoption. The Christian transhumanists, hook, line, and sinker. And I like these people. They're young, they're frisky, they love technology, and they see in transhumanist futurism an end goal that looks like Christian eschatology. So we believe, number 5, that the intentional use of technology, so note that's kind of the tool alignment matrix, coupled with following Christ, will empower us to become more human. Okay, not post-human, more human, across the scope of what it means to be creatures in the image of God. And they're fully aware that for St. Paul, the true human is the future Jesus Christ, not going back to Adam and Eve. All right, I'd like to, and I'm aware of the time, I don't want to belabor this one, but the theologian, public theologian, should compare transhumanist utopia with what at least the biblical traditions, especially the Christian tradition, have to say about the future. Here's Nick Bostrom, and basically the AI created super intelligent future where basically give us everything we want. That includes immortality, and immortality comes in 2 types. Here's Aubrey de Grey. That is to say, using computer technology to alter our genomes, we will live forever, well, at least 1,000 years. And how many times will we have to go to the DMV and take our driver's test? The second is cybernetic immortality, and that's Ray Kurzweil, who says that my brain and mind is analogous to hardware and software. And we know we can remove the software from the hardware in a computer. Could we remove the mind from the brain and put it into the computer cloud? And then we wouldn't be limited by space. We could travel from planet to planet in our disembodied mind. This process would capture a person's entire personality, memory, skills, and history. Two forms of immortality. I'm going to pass over this section on what are the assumptions about the mind here, and then ask a little bit if we're going to go theologically with what we know and what is promised in the future of AI. Would we ask AI to help you and me pursue the life of virtue, the life of sanctification? Could we form ourselves to become more and more Christ-like? And I have a friend who's also a student here, Hermina Nedulescu, who is a Romanian Orthodox, and she's a brain researcher in Scripps. I said, come on, give me your opinions. Come on, what do you think? And she is already in that stage of research where she's borrowing from AI principles to analyze the human brain. The Orthodox Christian must ask, how might a deep brain implant affect or aid me on the path toward theosis or deification? Might we envision a partnership between transhumanism and sanctification? All right. Whether AI is ex vivo or IA is in vivo, she says, machine intelligence may well influence a person's actions once they engage with it. But we must dub both AI and IA as an environmental stimulus, not an essential component to our soul. It's still going to be extra self, extra soul in character. I'm going to pass over this, other than to say that that there's one organization I'm going to recommend for everybody that really is as up to date on public theology as you can be on this, called AI and Faith. It's centered in Seattle. Began with Microsoft software engineers, and it's interreligious in character, and it's doing some really good work at trying to stimulate scholarship. Finally, here's a question. Suppose we establish the guardrails and we prevent the development of superintelligence. Would your curiosity be twinged? Will we wonder, as we approach the future, can we live without knowing whether AGI or ASI would be capable of developing selfhood, commanding dignity, and maybe sitting next to us in a pew? That's all. Bye-bye.
Ted, thanks so much. That was really great. So let me now introduce our respondent, who is Noreen Hersfeld, and she actually has worked with Ted before. I'll just say a few things about Noreen. She's an emerita professor at Nicholas at St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict. She too has worked a great deal in the field and has taught classes in AI, and is an author on multiple different articles and books. She did a book, In Our Image: Artificial Intelligence and the Human Spirit. I'm really looking forward to hearing her comments. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. You heard a little bit from me before. I have a couple of questions for Ted, and the first one that I have is, are we afraid of the wrong thing? In other words, you mentioned a lot of the fears of transhumanists, that we're going to create, a superhuman AI that might not value humans properly. As you already pointed out, I don't believe we're anywhere near doing that, so I'm not particularly worried about that. However, I do have a real worry, and that is that I see AI and climate change on a collision course. At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned the idea that AI might be the next step in evolution, as evolution makes for more and more complex intelligences. And my concern, first of all, from a scientific point of view, is that evolution always works to make an organism more fitted to its environment. And yet AI is not particularly fitted to our environment. All the big companies right now are racing to build data centers, and each of these data centers uses as much electricity as 100,000 homes. In other words, we're now going to be burning more fossil fuels to try to race toward this AGI that I don't think we can ever get to. So are we making a mistake by not understanding how evolution actually works? My other concern is the devaluing that we see of the body in this race to build a human-like artificial intelligence. One thing Christianity brings to the table of world religions is precisely an emphasis on the body and a sanctification through the incarnation of Jesus of the entire material world. And yet in AI, I see a sort of neo-Gnosticism that says mind good, body bad, mind separable from body. Um, that was a heresy back to the early church fathers, and I think it's still a heresy today. So I guess I'd like to hear what you think, both about are we afraid of the right thing? And what about this denigration of the body for a disembodied mind that we see in AI? How could that possibly fit with Christian theology?
I love the way you describe the evolutionary process, survival of the fittest, as being fit for our
Mhm.
environment. It is clear that the next stage in AI development is going to be as ruinous for the ecosphere as anything that the Industrial Revolution has contributed with regard to the enormous amount of energy that will be used, the enormous amount of water that will
Yeah.
be used, the depletion of non-renewable natural resources. Yes, and this is almost invisible, but this is a point that you make very, very well, namely, this may be the single greatest threat to our environmental health that we're going to have in the next couple of years. If we go back 25 years to the birth and nourishment of the transhumanists, such as Nick Bostrom or Ray Kurzweil, they had envisioned that this superintelligence would organize everything in the world, including solving all of our ecological problems by putting nature back into balance through superintelligence. So they really did have an ecological sensitivity and a sense of moral obligation. I don't see that anymore. When you hear the billionaires talking to the president of the United States, you don't hear them talking about the health of the ecosphere. It's just gone. And so I think both at the ideological level as well as the practical level, yes, the next 5 years for AI could be some of the most harmful years yet when it comes to the health of our planet. Disembodiment, Gnosticism. I think that everything that goes on in transhumanism is not necessarily anti-body. Certainly, Aubrey de Grey and those who want to improve human health through genetic research, aided by by artificial intelligence. I don't see them as Gnostic in the same way, but definitely Ray Kurzweil in that way, who are anticipating cybernetic immortality, whereby you're in my consciousness, you're in my intelligence, you're in my selfhood, all of our memories will be lifted off the physical substrate and live in this mystical computer cloud. Well, if that's going to happen to us, Who needs a healthy biosphere on Earth? You can travel to the moon. It wouldn't matter. You don't have to breathe on the moon. And yes, I think that cybernetic immortality and its corollaries release us from the sense of moral obligation to make the planet healthy, to make human bodies healthy. I mean, we know that artificial intelligence is accelerating and enhancing medical research that help make us healthy, but you wouldn't need it if you're a Gnostic, a cybernetic Gnostic. Maybe we can find a new term here. So whether I should fear that or not, I don't know. I tend to think, and I think maybe you would agree with me, that the vision of a disembodied intellectual existence is probably unrealistic, given what we know about intelligence. So I don't fear it so much. I just, I'm afraid that when Ray Kurzweil's balloon pops, he might have a bad day. But I think that that's the worst that's going to happen here. But let me just underscore the first of your two concerns. We need an ecological ethic, and we need our AI and IA leaders to embrace that ethic. Oh my gosh, do we ever? But I don't see it in the climate right now. And in fact, I'm going to ask you this question, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. If all of our techie leaders were so intent on embracing ethics and guardrails and government influence 2.5 years ago, where are they now? Because I don't see it anymore. And where will, all right, no, that's my question. Elon Musk doesn't seem to be the moral person he was 2.5 years ago. All right. You have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I think that the reason is that they have convinced themselves, going all the way back to your first slide with Vladimir Putin, they've convinced themselves that we are in an arms race, and that the country that gets it to AGI or superintelligence first wins the arms race. And so they have, all of these companies had made climate pledges. If you go back 5 or 6 years ago, those are all out the window right now. Most of these companies had hired ethicists, such as Timnit Gebru at Google, and they are out the window too. They have all lost their jobs, been gotten rid of as they have streamlined these companies down to a singular goal. So, I think that is a problem right now. And I think in another way, this is also a problem. I think it's a good sign that we're starting to see the use of large language model chat type programs for coding going down. We are starting to see their adoption by businesses going down, because 90% of businesses who have adopted this AI have found that it hasn't improved their bottom line at all.
All right.
So it's interesting. Gary Marcus just had a Substack post today where he quoted the financial analyst Russ Hendricks, who said, U.S. tech companies spending $500 billion a year is not bullish. It is the single greatest exercise of capital destruction in history.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The people are starting to talk about a bubble, and so I'd be interested in hearing from you. Are we in a bubble that has been powered? You see, have all these people been inside a Silicon Valley bubble, and they've convinced themselves that this is going to happen to the point where they are spending trillions of dollars, and yet OpenAI has yet to make a profit. They haven't made a cent. Are we not only going to face ecological issues, but are we going to face a big financial issue here as well?
I'm not an expert in economics, but those that I pay attention to are all agreeing we're in a bubble. They're asking whether or not this enormous new investment in the development of AI is connected at all with actual gains in industry and productivity. And most of them say, no, not yet, maybe never. And how will that affect in the months ahead the larger economy? And economists really know how to scratch their head in public very well on that. But I think it's generally agreed we're in a bubble. When it's going to pop and what the ramifications are going to be are unforeseen by smarter people than I am. But I think that if these dumb decision makers are trying to create super intelligence, we probably don't need to worry about super intelligence. No, I didn't say it. I didn't say anything like that. I find these people very admirable. I love technology. I grew up in a technological home. I'm rooting for them. But I really think there was greater wisdom 2.5 years ago than there is now. We really need guardrails that are formulated by healthy ethics, by long range visions, and by a sense of moral responsibility for the health of the whole planet, which includes economic justice as well as loving our roses.
Well, thank you too. The discussion was really great. I think it was helpful. Let's move to some of the audience questions. I'm going to go with the question from Jason Roberts because he asks about Hermina Nedalescu's point, and Hermina is actually my good friend, and I sent her off to work with Ted. So there we go again.
Thank you.
To the point of the Hermina Nedalescu's assertion that AI and IA must be dubbed an environmental stimulus, not an essential component of our soul, I have several questions. I'm not going to read all the questions. I'm going to only read one. Does this assertion rely on either a dualistic or compartmental view of the soul as not emerging from the living physical body or possessing discrete capacities or faculties? Let me read that again.
Yes.
Does this assertion rely on either a dualistic or compartmental view of the soul as not emerging from the living physical body or possessing discrete capacities or faculties?
I think that question makes a lot of sense. And I don't know Hermina's metaphysics at work there. But I think what we saw in the statement that I quoted is that for her, the deep self, the deep person, is the one wherein God dwells. And that you and I, as we relate to the enhancements of artificial intelligence or intelligence amplification, are using it almost like a tool for purposes that we decide. I think that's what Hermina meant, namely that the soul is the agent and the intelligent amplification would be something the agent employs. Ergo, it's external rather than internal. However, I could imagine implied in the question, what if your definition of the self is much more relational? What if it's more interactional? You know, as we grow up, the line between ourself and our family and the significant other people in our lives, that's a blurry line. And the idea of autonomy is really an abstraction because who we are is to some degree, a significant degree produced by our interactions, and that would include technology. And so I could see the question implying, well, wait a minute. If you and I incorporate intelligence amplification into our thinking and our feeling and our decision making, that doesn't just augment the self, that participates in the self. Let me just reiterate, hey, that's a really good question. I'm not sure how to answer it.
Food for thought there. Lots of food for thought. Let me go on to another question. Please share more about why you mentioned transhumanism alongside AI.
Well, because I think the two of them have been growing up together, and a lot of the transhumanists that I've met are also engineers working in artificial intelligence. Are there AI techies who are not transhumanists? Oh, yeah, there are lots of them. But boy, they sure like transhumanism as a big ideological umbrella. I mean, you can sweep up, as Kurzweil does and others, the whole of reality, evolution, big category. Evolution has a purpose. Evolution has as its purpose the development of ever higher and higher and higher levels of intelligence. I don't think Charles Darwin said that, but the transhumanists say that. And so, what you and I are doing, if we're transhumanists, is we're helping evolution to achieve its already built-in entelechy or goals. So I think that's why William Grassi and others will say transhumanism looks kind of like a religion for techies. And again, as I said, I really admire the group called the Christian Transhumanists, even if I might be critical, because they have seen this vision of the future in which past problems are going to get fixed. And why couldn't the Holy Spirit and the advance of technology work in partnership on fixing the problem? Sin, I find to be a kind of deep problem, but why not give it a try?
Right. It's sort of related to the next question, which is how do you discern and distinguish between intelligence and consciousness?
Oh, I guess the question would be in this discussion, is consciousness a necessary component to genuine intelligence? And as we saw from the people I quoted, some say yes and some say, or would assume no. Let me just say that the human intelligence we know has consciousness as an essential ingredient. And it seems to me that any theory of machine intelligence that some smart person should develop at some point will have to make a decision on that. So I would say consciousness, and by the way, that's a mystery. I mean, philosophers still haven't figured out how you get from brain synapse firings to a consciousness with a sense of selfhood. They haven't figured that one out yet. The philosophers call it the hard problem. And I think we just have to let that hard problem rest and say, look, until you get a theory of consciousness, you're not going to understand intelligence and whether you can get along with it or without it.
Great. This question's maybe a little complicated, but I'm going to try to simplify it as best I can. It's about evolution and the idea of intelligence. So there is an arc of evolution regarding the idea of intelligence. This seems to disregard the presence of multiple forms of intelligence, such as emotional intelligence, other kinds. Starting with data, you lead to pattern recognition, you lead to knowledge, you lead to context-driven truth, you lead to wisdom, you lead to eventually to action. It seems AI may skip these steps and go directly to action. Is this a legitimate concern? Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure I understood why the question is stated the way it is. So try it again if you.
So it starts out with the idea of there being an arc of evolution regarding the idea of intelligence, and that oftentimes when we are looking at the development of new things, we start with data, it goes to pattern recognition, it goes to knowledge, it goes to context-driven truth, it goes to wisdom, it finally leads to action. And do you think AI goes through all these steps, or do they skip some steps? Does AI skip some steps, going right to action? And is that a real concern?
All right, I have two thoughts about that question. The first one, let's be careful about our assumptions about evolution. I think the transhumanists are simply wrong. There is no entelechy built into evolution that leads to ever increased intelligence. As Noreen already pointed out, Darwinian evolutionary theory is quite specific that adaptation is of an organism to its environment. That's what happens. Francisco Ayala, the late who won the presidential medal for science as an evolutionary biologist, says, yes, it's adaptation to the environment, not intelligence. He can imagine the whole human race going extinct through self-destruction, but the insects will live on. Why? Because they're adapted to their environment. And smart human beings went and destroyed their environment, and that's why they went extinct. So, as strictly scientific theory, you can't really say that evolution is guided by the purpose of increased intelligence. Now, what about the technological process? Well, I lived with a father with 23 apps. And each morning he would put on his suit and tie and go to the General Motors Tech Center and invent something that hitherto had never existed in the future of the world. He thought he was earning a living. But if you thought it, this is marvelous. Technological creativity is a marvelous feature of the natural world. But if you asked him, how is it that you come up with an invention? The first thing is you look at everything else that's going on in technology and you add something. And when he would file for a patent, they would have to do a 2-week search throughout General Motors to see if anybody else came up with the same idea at the same time, because there was a time that was ripe for the next stage of invention. So invention, creativity is an augmentative process, no less genius, but it's an augmentative process. So when the questioner laid out all of these steps ending up with action, I have to say, I don't really recognize those steps. And in his case, being an automotive engineer, you started with a problem and you tried to solve it. Everybody agrees. Intelligence includes problem solving, maybe more things, but at least that. So I just want to say, thank you, God, for giving the human race this co-creative capacity. It is just a marvel to behold. But it's an understandable marvel. It's not a miracle. It's not a mystery. We do know how it works, and it grows incrementally, small step by small step by small step. And at least in our society and in our economy, it's driven primarily by need, even though I will have to say there are some things our AI techies do that are driven by just sheer fantasy and imagination. And I'm going to applaud it every time they have a technological victory or breakthrough.
That's great. Ted, Maynard has a question.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is going to be the last question. And if I may sign off because I actually have to teach a class in 5 minutes. So I'm going to turn the thing over to Maynard and he will ask his question and then end for the day. But let me just say this has been fabulous.
Okay. Good to see you again, Gail.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Yeah, one the question that I have, Ted, is given the thoughts that you have shared about transhumanism, what are the implications for our theology? Should we not also need to rethink what we mean by divinity?
By divinity? Oh, that's a good question. I give my energies mostly to human nature, and I'm a disciple of Reinhold Niebuhr and Paul Tillich. What I'm worried about is that, our AI techies are going to get those wheels spinning, and then some bad actor is going to come and stick a stick in the spokes, and it's going to splatter all over the pavement. Let me just say that's kind of where I invest my my work. With regard to divinity, working through natural processes, working through cultural developments, working through human artifice, yes, I believe that God can work providentially through engineers, even AI engineers. We know God works through Methodist pastors, right? Right. Well, so I think that AI could work through engineers as well. But if God is doing that, we're not going to be able to predict how it's going to turn out. As I said, I think about as far as I can go is to say, thank you, God, for giving us engineers and giving us the process of constant creativity. It's a great gift, but I'm just going to fall back on the old fashioned stewardship. I hope we use it for good and not for evil. So I guess that's something less than maybe you were looking for there, Maynard.
Well, yeah, the vision for the future is essential for a sound concept of divinity, and um, it means that, for me anyway, that we need to parallel our thinking about transhumanism with a I don't want to say modern or updated, but a concept of divinity that
Mm-hmm.
that's in that context.
Well, I'll certainly grant you that in the New Testament, we see almost nothing about technology, yet technology is the world we live in. So, yes, we do have to understand it
Yeah.
theologically. Uh, you could have another webinar on that topic.
Well, that's true. We've got a whole another year to think about it, right? All right. Thank you, Ted.